We start this news hour in Ukraine, where grain exports are expected to begin in the next 24 hours. 25 million tons are waiting in Ukrainian ports, where they've been stuck since Russia invaded. That's caused food shortages and price rises around the world. Meanwhile, UK defense officials say a Ukrainian counter-offensive in Kherson, in the south of the country, is gaining pace after a key bridge was bombed out of action. And the Ukrainians are counter-attacking in the second largest city of Kharkiv too. But as Arise News chief correspondent John Cookson reports, nowhere is safe.
On the front line in the east of Ukraine, and artillery units are in action near Kharkiv. Ukraine's transition to NATO standard artillery is moving with incredible speed. The Ukrainians claim they're turning the tide against the Russians in this conflict, but they've yet to prove themselves in a major offensive operation. A Ukrainian soldier says his intelligence is there's a unit of 12 Russian soldiers within range.
23-31 навести.
This kind of operation is known as shoot and scoot. So after the assault, the Ukrainians cover their tracks and take cover. Close by, someone's hung dummies representing Russian soldiers, their presence symbolic of the hatred on both sides. In a makeshift bunker, the Ukrainians take shelter and want to send a message to Western nations, including America, who've been supplying sophisticated rocket systems known as HIMARS. This soldier says, "In these times we understand which country is really brotherly to us, so I really thank them for their help for humanitarian aid and HIMARS. We will win this together," he says.
Вільна, самостійна, суверенна.
On a national holiday recognizing Ukraine's statehood, President Zelensky told his people, "We will fight for our statehood to the last breath, the last shot, the last soldier, and not only ours, but the enemy's." But as a sharp reminder of Russia's ability to strike at will, multiple missiles strike Ukrainian territory only 25 kilometers from the capital, Kyiv. The Ukrainians may claim they're starting to win the war. In truth, they're far from victory. John Cookson, Arise News.
And for the very latest from Ukraine, we can cross over to Lviv, where AP correspondent Sam Mednick joins us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with what's happening in the occupied city of Kherson. Suggestions that Moscow is reinforcing its positions in that city. Apparently its troops are at risk of being cut off. What's the latest?
Well, Ukraine is intensifying its counteroffensive in the southern region of Kherson. The British military has said that they're gaining momentum, and they say that this is largely because of the repeated attacks on this 1,000-meter long bridge that they say, due to so many attacks, is probably useless right now, and not that they can't use it anymore. But Russia needs this bridge in order to get supplies and military personnel into occupied areas that they have in the Kherson region. Analysts say that without this bridge, if Russia loses it, it'll be a major military and political setback for them. Today, the advisor to the Ukrainian president said that the operation to liberate Kherson was underway, and they said that the plan was to encircle the Russian soldiers and then give them three options. They could retreat, they could surrender, or, he said in his words, they could be destroyed. Ukraine says that it's also hit Russian strong points as well as 2 munition depots. And the Ukrainian military says that it's noticed that the Russian military is regrouping and putting a lot of forces towards the southern region. But all of this comes amid new intelligence reports by the United States that Russia is speeding up its motion to hold referendums and to annex the areas that it already occupies. Yesterday, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He said that, in his words, the next steps for Russia was to hold what he called sham elections, which would basically annex these territories. Blinken also said, on another note, that he was going to meet Russia's top diplomat, Sergei Lavrov, in the coming days, and that this would be the first meeting between the two since Russia invaded in February.
If Ukraine were to regain Kherson, how much would it undermine Russian attempts to paint the occupation as a success?
Analysts say that it would be a big win if Ukraine was able to retake Kherson. It would be a morale booster as well. And they also say that this could really help in terms of international support, which has been very strong until now. The international community has supplied a lot of long-range rockets, long-range missiles like the HIMARS that the United States has, and that if Ukraine could show that they can use these to regain this ground, that it could potentially help keep momentum going and keep support going, moving forward. And so this is not only strategically that this would be a big win because it would cut off Russia from having this corridor along the south, but also morally and in terms of the international perception of what Ukraine is able to do.
And elsewhere, Sam, fighting said to be continuing in the eastern Donetsk region, where the Ukrainians have confirmed that Russian forces have captured Ukraine's second biggest power plant. What can you tell us about that?
Right. This is a significant move, according to some analysts who say that because it is the second biggest in the country, it could disrupt power supplies. This plant is also in the Donetsk in the east. This is an area where analysts have said that it's one of the few areas that Russia has made significant offensive operations, and that it's able to sustain these operations around towns like Bakhmut and Seversk, where it's able to continue moving forward. So, some analysts say that this is significant. However, the Ukrainian government does not seem too fazed by this capture. An advisor to the president did an interview on YouTube yesterday, and he said that this was, in his words, kindergarten. That's what he called the capture. And he said what he's looking out for in the coming days is for Russia to dig in defensively in the east, not necessarily do more offensive military activities in the east, but to regroup and send troops towards the southern region of Kherson.
So, reasonably briefly, Sam, given the arrival of sophisticated Western weaponry in Ukraine, what you were telling us about counter-offensives being planned for Kherson, I'm also hearing Kharkiv, would you say that this is a brief lull in this fighting, a turn, or would you say that the tide is actually now going in favor of Ukraine in the conflict?
I think it's hard to say right now. People, analysts, diplomats, soldiers that I speak to, a lot of people say that they don't know what is happening at the moment, and they don't know where this is going to end up, and that there are so many variables right now that it's really hard to predict. What we do know is that there is a big push right now by Ukraine, particularly in the south, and that according to them and according to British military and others, there are some gains that are being made, particularly with the hitting of these bridges. In other parts of the country, the analysts say that, for example, in the east, not a lot of ground has been gained by Russia, but also Ukraine hasn't taken ground either. And so there's a bit of sort of a stalemate in some of those areas. Same around the northeast of Kharkiv. Soldiers that I've spoken to there have pretty much said that the lines have not really changed recently. And so that also isn't moving. It seems like a lot of the activity right now, a lot of the focus is on this southern region.
Sam, thanks very much indeed for your reporting and your analysis there. Sam Mednik is an AP reporter, and she was talking to me there from the Ukrainian city of Lviv.